Hello everyone, welcome back to another live stream here on Play on GAA with me, Seamus Brady, your host, and for this one I am joined by Jason from the Loaf of Bread GAA podcast. In this episode, we are going to be giving a full recap of all the action which took place over the weekend in Gaelic football, in Camogie and in ladies Gaelic football. There were some great results, great finals, history made, Jason. You're talking off the top of my head, Kilkerrin Clonberne on the ladies' side, they hadn't actually won an All-Ireland Club Title in 2021. They won it for the first time in January 2022, and they finish off the year by claiming their second one, making it a back-to-back. Glen winning their first Ulster, Kerins winning their first Munster. This is all off the top of my head. Just, yeah, fantastic weekend for the GAA. History made all around the board.
Yeah, unbelievable overall. I suppose I'll throw in another one into that. Longford Slashers, who was a ladies' side who was very fortunate to commentate on their Leinster final and their All-Ireland Semi Final. An incredible bunch of women as well. But as you said, yeah, history all over the place, and perhaps maybe not the worst thing, I suppose, in the men's football in particular, to have a couple of new faces, I suppose. I was slightly disappointed my own old side, the Downs, didn't get past Kilmacud Crokes, but that's a whole other story about transfers in Galway and all that. Yeah, that's another day's debate, I think. But yeah, I was just reading back through a few. I suppose having a Derry, Kerry, Galway, Dublin representatives, just trying to see where the last ones were. So obviously, Derry's last All-Ireland club winner were Ballinderry, Shamrocks back in 2002, and one of their stars on the day was Conleth Galligan, Kilcoo manager. So yeah, I like the fact that it's different. Kilmacud obviously, I think, will go in along with Glen as the two red hot favourites. I think Moycullen are going to get ignored a little bit, I think, and Kerins, I don't know what really people are going to make of them, because it's all about Kilmacud and it's all about Glen. Obviously, with the Ulster Championship being so competitive, so physical. Malachy O'Rourke, obviously, so much experience, and his CV is off the charts. Yeah, just history all around, and it's going to get better. It's going to be interesting, I suppose, for the ladies next week, and then in the new year, then for the men's as well. So yeah, an exciting Christmas, definitely.
Yeah, no doubt. I do actually find it interesting there that it's going to be the Glen against Moycullen in one semi-final, and then it's going to be Kerins O'Rahillys against Kilmacud Crokes in the other semi-final. Now, if memory serves, of course, the two semi-finals of the 2022 championship were Dublin against Kerry and Galway against Derry. And now in the club championship, we have the Galway champions going up against the Derry champions, and we have the Kerry champions going up against the Dublin champions. So very interesting to see that it has played out this way. Of all the eventualities that could have happened, that it has ended up this way. But of course, the first step in making that happen was, of course, the Watty Grahams Glen beating Kilcoo by 112-16 at the Athletic Grounds in Armagh. They win their first ever Ulster title, and they avenged last year's extra time defeat at the same ground where they were beaten, of course. They were fantastic here, Jason. They absolutely dominated from the start. They went 5 points to 0 up, dominating. Very eye-catching scores right off the bat from Conor Glass. Conleth McGuckian, of course, was man of the match. Jack Doherty as well. That start for the Glen, I think, was crucial. They burst out of the traps.
Yeah, it was vital. And yeah, there's a little bit kind of going into it where your mind is playing back to last year, and that wasn't it Jerome Johnson, I think, got the goal that sort of crushed them in that extra time game. So yeah, they needed a fast start, and I suppose maybe over the years of watching Ulster football, a fast start is not something you get too often. So I think that also adds to the excitement that's going to be in the semi-final, because Glen really did come out of the traps, and for the game as a whole, it kind of made it, because I think too often we've seen too many club games, maybe in Ulster in particular, which are blanket defence and everything, whereas Glen really did come out of the traps. As you say, Conor Glass was something else. I think some of the AFL experience down under kind of helped him out a little bit as that game went on, especially when the physicality and stuff came into it, that he's never going to shirk away from that kind of thing as well.
No, I've never seen an athlete come back from the AFL and have it's just an immediate impact on his club and his county. Conor McKenna I think deserves a shout for that. I mean, let's not forget he stuck 2 goals away in the semi-final for Tyrone as they went on to beat Kerry after extra time. Like, his impact on their All-Ireland win that year was huge, even though sometimes he didn't play the best of football. But I think Conor Glass he's just imperious. I mean, he's once in a generation type player. Like, I really mean that. I think he's just ridiculously good.
Yeah, I suppose in the fact that Derry haven't hit the county heights as such of, like, say, Dublin or whatever, that he doesn't get mentioned often in the same bracket as like Fenton or any of the, as you said, sort of players of this generation who are, the top drawer. But, put him into a team and the team just instantly changes because he has the influence, he has the height, he has the skill. As I said, he's never going to shirk out of a tackle. He's got a bit of everything, and to add to that, then he's also a scorer. Like, he's not afraid to burst forward when he needs to. At the same time, he'll track back and do a defensive job. So, like, I think Glen, like, if I put my money anywhere, I said at the very start, I wouldn't be the only one, that whoever wins Ulster will win the All Ireland, even despite Shane Walsh and Kilmacud and everything else that goes with it. And I still think Glen are absolutely the team to beat. And what happened at the weekend, I'm more convinced, I think, that they will win it. The goal came, near the end when, Kilcoo were desperately looking for something up the other end. But I don't think the scoreline flattered Glen too much. 6 points. It looks like, it was a tough enough game. In reality, I think they could have won by a lot more. Now, penalty miss, of course, was a big turning point in the game. But at the same time, I think they're going to be hard stopped. And as I was saying, like, I'm a big Malachy O'Rourke fan. Someone told me recently, I think after the game, whatever it was, that he did his thesis on something like oxygen levels in GAA players' blood or something. Like, his attention to detail is obviously outrageous, and the success he had with, what do you call those lads, the Loop and Errol Kieran, and like, everywhere he goes, he brings success. So for anyone who's maybe knows Malachy O'Rourke, older than you or I, would probably not be too surprised. But, like, for me, it's just incredible that everywhere he goes, something happens. Like, whether it's 3 in a row Ulster finals with Monaghan or whatever it may be. So winning the All Ireland, I think, here with Glen, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest, but it would be another, notch on the CV, really, more than anything else. But yeah, for me, Glen are definitely the ones to beat, I think, anyway. I don't know about you, but for me, they are anyway.
Yeah, no, I think I think any of Moy Cullen, Kilmacud Crokes and the Glen could beat each other on any given day. I do think that Kerins are a little bit out of their depth here. I mean, obviously I could be made to eat those words, but I do think Moy Cullen, Watty Grahams Glen and Kilmacud Crokes have just absolutely obliterated everyone in front of them, bar, of course, 1 or 2 slip-ups from Moy Cullen where they look like they might be beaten by Strokestown, and they were held for long stages by Turles Strand down in the Connacht final. But I mean, you compare that to how they blew Westport away. They've shown clear scoring ability, and then they've beaten the likes of Mount Bellew, Moylock on their way to this stage. So they've clearly proved themselves. And then when they get to Croke Park and they can play on the open surfaces and everything, I feel like they will flex their attack way more. Obviously, you mentioned the key moments. So 2 key moments I want to talk just before we move on from this game. Of course, the penalty miss. So Aaron Brannigan had pulled a goal back for Kilcoo. This was after the Glen had fired into the lead that they were in. Brannigan puts that goal into the back of the net. Kilcoo back into the game. Paul Devlin gets black carded. He's off for 10 minutes. Kilcoo stay in the game. Jerome Johnson then is fouled for a penalty just before halftime. And Paul Devlin, who's just returned from his black card, puts the ball wide. That's a huge moment because instead of going in ahead, Kilcoo went in at halftime 7 points to 1-3 down. They were 1 point down instead of being 2 points up. Psychologically on both sides, that plays a huge role because, as you mentioned, Watty Grahams Glen were better in the first half. And if they'd gone in behind at halftime, we might have seen their mentality questioned, their will questioned, their resolve. Then at the end, of course, the last minute goal from Alex Doherty, as you said there earlier, Kilcoo had kind of thrown caution to when we do have to throw the kitchen sink, and they just got caught on the break. But I think those 2 key moments, I think the first goal miss, like the penalty miss, I think that set up Watty Grahams Glen to dominate the second half. which then led to Kilcoo pushing up and then led to the last minute goal to top it off.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned psychologically, I think, individually for Paul Devlin, that's, the worst kind of scenario. You're coming straight back on after one error, and then in some ways you kind of make another error, by putting the penalty wide.
Mm-hmm.
And, a bit of a touch of Harry Kane kind of in some ways about the psychological stuff, that you're trying to drag yourself back, then you sort of in some ways feel like that it's your responsibility to drag the entire team back then, because you feel like, I'm after missing this penalty. Could it change the game? As you said, they would have went in, ahead at half time. And yeah, psychologically, it was a bit of a killer blow. And then the flip side of psychology of it is that Watty Grahams then are like completely buoyed by this, and without actually scoring or doing anything whatsoever, they've been given, the push into the next gear, which, as we saw in the second half, they were able to kind of, I won't say ease to victory, but they were able to put men behind the ball. Defensively, they were well structured, and they did like any good team will do when team was throwing the kitchen sink at them, and the plug didn't come out of Glen's defence. They were able to push forward, and the killer goal, walking it into an empty net, basically, it's the icing on the cake for them. So psychologically, I think the penalty, yeah, you're right, is the change of the game. If that goes in, Malachy O'Rourke has a completely different halftime team talk. He's a completely different setup in the second half. I think we'll get a different game. Whether Kilcoo go and win it, it's hard to know. We'll never know, I suppose. But yeah, it would have made for a completely different battle in the second half. I think I would have been slightly disappointed if Kilcoo would have won. Mm-hmm. There's a little part of me just wanted to see Glen push on for that title. And as you said, I'm very excited about, the game against Moycullen. Moycullen obviously not littered with, every Donegal star under the sun, or every Galway star under the sun, I should say. They've got Desi Keneally, Sean Kelly, whatever, a few others. But they're just a very disciplined team, and they're kind of coming in under the radar a little bit. But as you said, it could have against Strokestown and Tour de Strand. They could have lost both those games, and it could be talking about a completely different team, up against Glen. But it'll make for an interesting game, whatever it is, January the 8th, I think, or whatever. So yeah, I'm excited for the semi-finals. I think they're going to be cracking games. I hope we don't get defensive shutouts, which could happen, but I don't see it happening. I think Conor Glass is going to get the player of the match, player of the year. I think he's going to get everything at the end of this. So
yeah. Then of course the other semi-final will be Kilmacud Crokes against Kerins O'Rahillys. Munster champions Kerins O'Rahillys, their first ever Munster title. Interestingly, they are the 8th Kerry side to win the provincial championship. I mean, honestly, I would have thought that number would have been higher. Tommy Walsh was fantastic. That's one of the first things you have to say. 1-1 scored. He set up the second goal for Barry John Keane. Huge fielding as well, at clutch moments. He caught crucial ball for Kerins O'Rahillys when their backs were against the wall. I mean, we have to talk. Straight away when we talk about this game, obviously Kerins winning by 2-6 against Newcastle West of Limerick's 1-8. That mad 5 minutes at the start of the second half. I mean, 4 each at half time. Very low scoring first half, very tense first half. And then you have that mad 5 minutes straight at the start of the second half. A Tommy Walsh goal, a Mike McMahon goal at the other end for Newcastle West to bring them right back into it, a 1-point game. And from the next kick out, David Moran launches the ball into Tommy Walsh, and then he finds Barry John Keane, who nearly takes the roof off the net. 3 goals in the space of 5 minutes, having been such a dull first half in terms of attacking threat. I mean, it just shows that any game can just burst into life in a moment like that.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Somebody online, I can't remember who it was, one of the journalists compared the goal fest to something out of the Louis van Gaal Netherlands playbook of huge balls into the full forwards and just sort of hope for the best out of it. Kerry no strangers to that over the years, of course, with Star and all that. So the only thing I would perhaps be a little bit not fearful for them is that you come up against a side who are able to defend that, and I think their options are a little bit more limited. Tommy Walsh is I think he's a year younger than me. I think he's 35. Barry John Keane has been around a good bit. He's early 30s as well. So I don't know if they have the same. Not that we're writing them off as such, but I don't know if they bring the same kind of threat that some of the other teams do. Perhaps with slightly younger, nippier forwards. Now, nothing against Tommy Walsh; he's obviously class, and Barry John has plenty of pace, but I don't know if they're the same threat really. But in saying that, if the kick out to David Moore and the long ball in works, at the end of the day, you don't care as long as you win the game, especially when it comes to a knockout. That 5 minutes was, I don't know what you call it, carnage in some ways. And it was completely unexpected because the first half, as you said, was such not completely drab, but it was very much feeling each other out, trying to see, what was going on. Newcastle West, I think, have won 3 of the last 4 Limerick titles. They're no strangers to the Munster Championship, but they're perhaps maybe devoid of games against, strong opposition like that. So there was a sense of both sides trying to feel each other out, and it, left for a very low scoring half. And then suddenly it's like at halftime, both managers just said, right, look, we spotted that the full back lines maybe are a little bit weak. If we lob the ball in, we'll get a few goals. And then it's just like both teams said the same thing at halftime and just sort of went for it. So it made the game a spectacle because there was potential for it to become a bit drab, and that kind of kicked it into life. So I think Kerins would be happy just to get past it and be done with it. Newcastle, to be a bit annoyed at themselves. I think I can't remember exact year. I think it was in the 80s was the last time they were in a Munster final before that. So they'll learn from the experience. But all in all, I think not as exciting as the other semi-final for sure, despite the 5 minutes of chaos at the second half.
Yeah. Oh no, I think this was honestly, I think this was a missed opportunity for Newcastle West. I honestly believe that. You look at teams that have been in the Munster Championship over the last few years. You look at the likes of St. Finbars, Nemo Rangers have been hugely strong in Munster over the last 10, 15 years, and Dr. Crokes as well. Like, these teams have come out and been hugely strong. And Kerins, they've got beaten 3 times in the Kerry Championships, between the club and the county. So it was one of those things where you're saying Kerins had been shown to be vulnerable at stages, and against Éire Óg, they were damn lucky to get over the line in that one as well. And it was one of those things where I was looking at it saying, look, Newcastle West, the fact that Kerins' last score came in the 47th minute. 47th minute. They went the last 13 minutes without scoring. I mean, against Kilmacud Crokes, if you do that, you're done. You go 13 minutes without scoring against Kilmacud Crokes at pretty much any stage of the game, you're not going to win it, because Kilmacud Crokes, let's not forget, Kilmacud Crokes have held Portarlington scoreless. They've held in the first half. They held it down scoreless. Sorry, Portarlington, they held them scoreless from play. They've held it down scoreless from play in the Leinster final as well.
Yep.
They're coming up now against a Kerrin side that only hit 6 points in this game, in the entire game. And their last point came in the 47th minute. And worryingly, on the flip side, Newcastle West's attack only managed to hit 1 point from play. That was from Shane Stack. 1 point from play in the entire game. And their next test now is against an attack that has Shane Walsh, Darren Mullen, Shane Cunningham. It's way harder now. And so that's why I am worried for Kerins going into this game, because I'm saying they need to be stronger at both ends. They need to be stronger at the back, because they're going to get a way bigger test now with the likes of Shane Walsh coming to town. And then they need to score more. And it's going to be really hard to do that, because I think they are coming up against the best defence left in the club championship now in Kilmacud Crokes. I mean, you look at it, Kilmacud Crokes' defence. You've got Rory O'Carroll, Killian O'Shea, Andrew McGowan that have all played for Dublin at senior level. It's hugely strong. And the fact that they held 3 in a row League champions scoreless from playing the first half. Same with the Downs in the Leinster final. That just shows they can shut teams out. And unless Kerins build on their attack strategy, I think they could be in real trouble.
Yeah, and just kind of come into mind, I suppose, they were down to the last 4 in this and down to the last 4 in the World Cup. And in some ways, Kerins O'Rahilly are possibly the Morocco of this championship. That they're the ones that nobody seems to have any faith in, that they're goosed. In some ways they shouldn't be here, as you said, because of the defeats already in their own, county championship. But yet, they will look at it as, that's grand, that suits us fine. Don't even look at us, don't care about us. But at the same time, I think that's going to go against them completely. Kilmacud will potentially rip them to shreds. Now, it will be an interesting test for McGowan, O'Carroll, etc. at the back to have to deal with someone like Tommy Walsh, because us as the Downs, I suppose, I say we, haven't played for them in a long, long time, but the Downs rely on the nippy kind of forwards. We relied on Luke and Ian. Obviously, we had Mitch up there, and Mitch, was doing some one-handed catches in the second half. But at that stage, I think Kilmacud had kind of taken the foot off the gas a little bit. Whereas if the first ball in from Kerins O'Rahilly is David Moore wins the throw and decides to go route one into Tommy Walsh, I think it could be interesting if Kilmacud can defend that early on. I think Kerins are gone. I don't think they have a plan B. I don't think Barry John and the rest of them are going to be able to run at them. Kilmacud looked comfortable. Is probably an understatement. I hate saying that against my old club, but they looked very comfortable sitting up in the stand as well. You got a great view of their defensive setup. Everything from defence up to Craig in the middle, right up to Shane up front. They just looked like a team in first gear who could have kicked. Same against Port Arlington, they could have kicked about 640 if they really wanted to go for it. So I'd fear for Kerins O'Rahilly a little bit. I would fear for the winner of Glen and Moycullen as well. But I think Kerins O'Rahilly, I'm going to put my hat in the ring and write them off completely and say that it's Kilmacud versus one or the other in the All-Ireland final. So the fact that I know you pointed out there that the 47 minute was the last time they scored, that doesn't bode well. Like 13 minutes, Shane Walsh and Shane Cunningham had kicked one something in the Downs in the first 6-7 minutes. So yeah, they'll be murdered if they don't come up with a plan B, and they don't have a long time to come up with that plan, don't have any time to execute it. So yeah, they're goosed in my eyes.
Yeah, no, I think that, look at it, I think Crokes, they're just too strong. And like my prediction for this game is I think Kilmacud are gonna blast them in the first half and then cruise it in the second half. That's what I think is going to happen. Same way they did it to Port Arlington, same way they did to the Downs. The game will be over at half time. They'll manage it out. They'll take Shane Walsh off with 10 minutes to go, and that will be it. That will be game.
Yeah.
Apologies for the phone call, of course. I forgot that my phone notifications were still on. But moving on to our next game, of course, this was the LGFA Finals. History made, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, by Kilkerrin Clonberne of Galway. They beat Donamoyne of Monaghan, of course, who are the absolute queens of Monaghan. They've had a stranglehold over that championship for years. They won this game by 13 points to 7. I mean, Olivia Divley, player of the match, 5 points, absolutely outstanding. Chloe Miskell, 4 points. Louise Ward, 2 points. Of course, the daughter of the manager, Willie Ward. Just an incredible day for Kilkerrin Clonberne. Back-to-back All-Irelands for Kilkerrin. As I mentioned, their last year's one was their first ever, and now they've made it 2 in a row.
Yeah, big day for them, I suppose. Olivia Divley, no stranger to success. I remember she did a number on Westmeath pretty much on her own over the summer for Galway as well. So, yeah, I think they'll be delighted, and obviously they'll be wanting to push on again next season. I think Francie Coleman will be slightly disappointed with Donamoyne. 13-7 makes it look like it was a somewhat close game. In reality, it was never in doubt. The chipped on scores at the end for Donamoyne kind of made it look somewhat close, but I think it's a disappointing return for Donamoyne, as you said, the Queens generally, and always thereabouts. But for Francie Coleman, who's been, I think must be a quarter of a century at that club at this stage, to be beaten in such a manner, I think will disappoint him. Perhaps, I suppose, shows where the standard is now in ladies football, that Kilkerrin were so strong that they were able to kind of stroll past a team with so much experience, I should say. I'd like to see next season who'll be able to take them down. Be interesting. I know Fox Rock kind of are strong enough as well. There'll be teams coming from all over the place, but these ladies will be hard bet next season for sure. And as long as Olivia Divley keeps playing,
if Kilmacud can get Lauren McGee back, I think she'd be a massive boost to them, because obviously she was gone for the semi-final against Donamoyne. She's probably their best player. I think if she came back, I think maybe they'd give it a right good go. But we also have to talk again. Another example of a really fast start kicking them on. The first 5 minutes, Kilkerrin were 4 points to 0 up. I mean, that's a real statement of intent for the rest of the game. And not only that, they were 8-3 up at half time. And then I'd like to throw in the period that Chloe Miskell was, it was Hannah Noon. She was sin binned in the second half. And during that time, Chloe Miskell tagged on 2 points. And Kilkerrin just didn't blink. And that was the stage where you're looking at thinking, oh, if Donaghmoyne are ever going to make a push, now is the time. When Kilkerrin are, a player down, they've had someone sin binned. But I thought Kilkerrin managed that period fantastically. And then Miskell getting the 2 points, that was pure oxygen for them. And then even though Cora Courtney, I think at midfield, she was brilliant, 3 points from her. I think that they were never going to catch them once they didn't make sufficient ground in that sin bin time.
Yeah, I think the quick start was, I can't remember exactly, but it was a lot of lost kickouts for Donaghmoyne, if I remember rightly. I think Miskell, Ward, Divley were all heavily involved, and very little of it came from their own backline. A lot of it came from just turned over kickouts. And then, being down a player when Hannah Noon is gone, Donaghmoyne, should have taken advantage, but Kilkerrin never really looked kind of pushed. They at no point, I think, did they ever go, oh, Jesus, we're down a player, we're in a bit of trouble here. If anything, they just kept going the way they were going. I think Sarah Gormley at fullback has to get a bit of a mention. She managed to keep Lauren Garland scoreless at full forward, which is quite an achievement. And I've done a lot of commentary on the ladies' football this year, and the full forward in most of the games that I've played, it's usually been a full forward versus full forward battle in every game that I've looked at, and to keep your opposition, keep your marker completely scoreless in the game is quite an achievement. In an All-Ireland final, it's particularly impressive. So she definitely deserves a mention. She got no real mention in any of the articles or newspapers, but I thought, personally, she should be very pleased with it. But Kilkerrin will be hard stopped. Yeah, if Laura McGee comes back, might make things interesting next year. And yeah, she did miss out on the crucial semi-final. But overall, I think the right team won, and I think the right team won comfortably enough, I suppose. Donaghmoyne, will be back again next year, though, as we'll expect. We could get a repeat of the same final again next year. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they came back. I mean, it's pretty much, I'd be stunned if they don't win Monaghan. So then if they get into the Ulster Championship, I mean, they're already on their way to the next stage. And of course, the other ladies' final, which took place over the weekend, of course, another team that you have commentated on, gotten to know them really well, Longford Slashers, becoming the first Longford side on the ladies' football to win a national title at senior level. 4-11 to 2-8. They beat Mullinahan. Grace Shannon with a brace of goals leading the way. Longford Slashers are the All-Ireland Intermediate champions.
Yeah, probably didn't help Mullinahan having to go all the way to extra time in their semi-final, I think, against Derry Donnelly or whoever it was up in Fermanagh. Probably didn't help having to go the extra mile, and a lot of controversy in that game, of course, about a goal disallowed as well. So the semi-final in particular, the Longford Slashers had, the Leinster final they had against Screen, when I was commentating on that, I was impressed more so by the fact that Screen scored 3 really quick goals. Ciara Smith was really good for Screen that day, but Slashers never once panicked. And then against Charlestown, everyone knew coming into that game, Deirdre Doherty was going to be the one to watch. Mayo, Irish soccer, she's done everything. And she scored all of Charlestown's points that day. But they were happy enough to kind of, let her go a little bit and just sort of make sure everyone else wasn't involved. So she ended up having to do everything on her own. And Slashers' defence was incredible. From Emer Casey in goals, Orla Nevin, who was player of the match in that Leinster final, she is one of the most up and down players I've ever seen in my life. Like she
stuck a goal away as well.
Yeah, and no stranger to a goal as well. She got 5 in her back, but there's times when she's more likely to be at 15 than at 5. And then everyone, they've got so many good forwards as well. The Shannons, they've got Grace, Kate, and Cara. They've got Kiana Lee, who's back from a soccer scholarship in the States. They have Kazi in midfield. She is the pint-sized warrior, is the only way to call her. She's only about 5 foot tall, but she's captain, and you can hear her a mile away. So had everything going for them. And Conor Clark, to be fair to him, Brian Farrell and the gang there did a cracking job with that. Conor would be a cousin for me. So the first time I met him was after the Leinster final, and he just has an enthusiasm about him, and he has experience with Longford Minor himself playing in Croke Park. So he, as he said after the All-Ireland semi-final, he would have traded all of those to watch Ashton Cosgrove go up the steps at Croke Park, and I'm delighted for them that it came true in the end. They were fully deserving winners on the day, and Gray Shannon is one of these footballers that, no disrespect to Longford football at all, and to Brian Noonan last season or whatever manager, but if she was on another county team, you'd see her winning All-Stars after All-Stars, because she is just ruthless, and she will go through you for a shortcut as well. And she has the height, she has the skill, the speed. She'd walk onto most county teams. So yeah, fully deserved, and I'm delighted for them as well. Another historical moment, as you said.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And of course, Grace, on the biggest stage of all, stepping up with 2 goals right when they needed them. I think we do have to give a shout out to Lorraine O'Shea. Stuck 2 goals away from Mulmahone in the second half when they were trying to crawl back into the game. But of course, as you mentioned, Orlan Evans getting that goal. Jessica Barry as well, very reliant on the frees for Longford Slashers. They had it. It was their day. And I mean, you could tell pretty early on, once that goal went in the 4th minute from Ashton Cosgrove, even the speculative goal, the first one from Gray Shannon, like that was a speculative effort. When that went into the net, you kind of got the feeling it might be their day. But I'm delighted for them. History made again, as you said. They are All-Ireland Intermediate champions for 2022. The Camogie Semi Finals also took place over the weekend. Sarsfields beat St. Vincent's by 112 to 110, and Loughgiel Shamrocks of Antrim beat Drom-and-Inch of Tipperary by 3-6 to 2-6. We'll start with the Sarsfields St. Vincent's game. 112 to 110, as I mentioned. Siobhan McGrath's 46th minute penalty was the key score, in my opinion. No doubt about that. Vincent's had been kind of hanging in the game. I do have to say they were very reliant on the frees from Aisling Maher. Not 1 point from play in the entire game for St. Vincent's. All 10 points came from Aisling Maher frees. The goal for Ali Maguire came just before halftime. That was crucial, as that made them go in at halftime, just 1 point behind at 8 points to 1-4. And when you considered it in the first 10 minutes, they were behind 6-1. I mean, that was a pretty good, method of staying alive there from St. Vincent's. Then in the second half, of course, that 46-minute penalty from Siobhan McGrath, I feel like that just gave Sarsfields the momentum that they needed and the shot in the arm that they needed to get over the line. But St. Vincent's, of course, fantastic year for them again, but they just came short in this one.
Yeah, I think Vincent's had a bit of a touch of Donna Moyne about them kind of early on. The Sarsfield scores early on were sort of not bad puckouts, but they were just poorly contested in some ways. I think they went 6-1 ahead, I think, early on, and most of those, I think, came from opposition puckouts, which I'd be disappointed with. I think if Drumgoole and the management team will be, I think you'd have to be slightly frustrated to kind of lose in the manner that they did, because I think they would have fancied themselves against Sarsfields, and probably no reason that they shouldn't. But it was the bad start that really, you don't want to have to climb a mountain in a Camogie match, especially in the winter time. You really don't want to have to try and climb a mountain. To put yourself 6-1 behind early doors was, I suppose she will kind of look at it and say it's slightly criminal in some ways to do that when you've got this far, to kind of make such a meal of it early on. The penalty got them over the line. Yeah, Cliona Callaghan won the penalty. As far as I remember, it was the turning point, really, kind of in the game. And I think Sarsfields will be relieved in some ways to get over the line. And I think Vincent's will look at it as a huge missed opportunity to get one over on Sarsfields. They're a well-experienced side as well. To not score from play is probably the killer fact and stat that comes out of this for Vincent's, because I can't think of a team that's ever won in All-Ireland without scoring from play. So yeah, I think they'll be really disappointed and frustrated by that. A poor return, even if the scoreline does show they only lost by 2. I think it's a poor return for them overall.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing, that they got that close and they didn't hit a point from play. Like they got the goal from play, but it was one of those things where they look at it and say, if we'd attacked better, I think they would have won that game. I
100%,
think that game was there for them. And Sarsfields, obviously the defending All-Ireland champions, they will face Loughgiel Shamrocks in the final. 3-6 to 2-6. They beat Drom-and-Inch by 4 first half goals in this game. This one flew out of the traps. Annie Lynn and Caitlin Dobbin, I hope I'm saying that right, got it for Loughgiel. Miriam Campion and Emer McGrath got it for Drom-and-Inch. I mean, just a mad first half. Drom went in ahead at half time, but then in the second half, Drom had a period of 22 minutes where they were held scoreless. And that, I think, was the crucial moment, because in that period where they were held scoreless, Roisin McCormack hit the third and final goal of the game for Loughgiel Shamrocks. I think that 22 minutes decided the game.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I suppose this game got plenty of publicity. It was on out the road for me here in Kinnegad, and all the talk pre-game was about the pitch and the fact it was covered in what looked like a bit of a sheet of snow and ice on it. But the guys in the camera there, I texted them and they assured me that the pitch was in perfect condition and everything. So neither side, I think, wanted to use the pitch as an excuse for winning or losing in this case. So that 22-minute period, crucial. I think Drom-and-Inch will, a little bit like Vincent's, will kind of look at this and go, lost by a goal, it's one score. Is there something we could have done different? You'd nearly rather have lost by 10 or 12 and at least go, right, look, we were bet on the day. Whereas Vincent's and Drom-and-Inch will both look back now and think, missed opportunity. Was there one decision in that game that we could have done slightly different? The goal for Loughgiel was at Roisin McCormack, because I think you said got it. It is like, you don't want to be on the losing end of a one score game, and it will sting. You'll hope they come back next year and try and change things, but it wasn't the greatest of games either. From what I saw from the guys on camera, I saw a little bit from them as well. It didn't look like the greatest game in the world. Conditions, slippy is probably an understatement as well, but you play the conditions. It's not like one team are playing on the ice and the other team are playing on lovely grass. You both play the conditions to the best of your ability, and Drom-and-Inch will be disappointed. Was it 22 minutes you said they were held scoreless for? I didn't.
Yeah, 22 minutes of the second half.
Yeah, that's like, you're not going to.
You can't get away with that.
No. The same way that we've talked about in the previous games, team going long periods and no more than the Downs going so long against Kilmacud. You're not going to come out on the right side of it, and if you do, it's fortune has favoured you somehow, and you need to improve for the next day. So Loughgiel I think will go in, even though they didn't perform that well. I think I would have them as slight favourites over Sarsfields. I've chatted to a few of the Loughgiel players over time as well, and I chatted to a couple of them yesterday. They seem a bit more up for it than I've chatted to a few of the Sarsfields as well, and they're a bit more coy about things, I suppose, I should expect. But I'd fancy Loughgiel in the final, just because I wouldn't say it's an upset, but a slight turner for the books maybe.
No, I'm going with the status quo. I'm going with I'm going with Sarsfields to beat Loughgiel. I feel like, look, Loughgiel only hit 6 points in this game, and I know that they hit 3 goals. I know that goals win games and everything that comes. Like, the saying is true, but you're not going to hit 3 goals every time you play. And the fact that they only managed to hit 6 points in this game, when you look at the flip side and you look at how well the Sarsfields defense did on the Vincent's attack, I mean, that they have the likes of Ashton Maher in there, like a 2017 All-Star, and the fact that they did so well on that Vincent's attack would lead me to believe they'll do a similar job on this Loughgiel attack. And once the goals aren't coming, they haven't shown me enough of an ability to get points. So I feel like Sarsfields will edge it, but I feel like it will be very close. Just before we wrap up, of course, we'll touch on the 2 Munster finals, which took place over the weekend, the intermediate final and the junior final. Rathmore of Kerry won the intermediate final. They beat Napiershig of Limerick by 117 to 10 points. Chrissy Spires kicked 12 points in that game. Shane Ryan, the goalkeeper for Kerry, played a corner forward. They were missing Paul Murphy. He was on his long-awaited honeymoon. And then in the junior football championship final, the Clifford brothers running the show again, as Fossa won by 117 to Kilmurray's 1-6. We do have to give a massive shout out though, and obviously shout out GAA Statsman for this stat. Fossa are the 24th best team in Kerry. Kilmurray are the 50th, if you're talking in terms of league system. So how these two have ended up playing each other in your junior final is beyond me. Why are they playing each other? Like the clear difference. The two games, Rathmore against Na Piarsaigh and Fossa against Kilmurray, it reminds me a lot of like when a team that has an A team, a B team, and a C team drops a loads of lads down from the A team to the B team to play a game there just for the crack. Like, I mean, it's one of those things where, look, Rathmore are such a strong side, and I think they'd give anyone in the Kerry Club Championship a game if they played them at the senior level. So how they've ended up in intermediate, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, a clean sweep for Kerry. They win the senior Munster title, the intermediate Munster title, and the junior Munster title. Not a bad weekend for the county.
Yeah, I suppose chatting about structure and everything is probably a whole other chat we could probably have. But I think not to back them up in any way, but I think Kerry will argue that their structure of, strange as it may be to many of the outside world, they say it works because competitively their games end up being very, very, hard fought in many cases. And the fact that, Stacks went down this year is kind of so bizarre in so many ways. But they would look at it, well, I won't say they, but some people would look at it and say, well, it just means that it's very, very competitive and you really have to be strong to stay up in it. But then you look at like their senior football championship in inverted commas, it's very hard to understand some of it. You have East Kerry and Mid Kerry playing in a senior football championship final, neither of whom can then go on to actually play in a provincial championship. So therefore we have to have a club championship then, which is not the 8 senior clubs and the 8 divisional teams, but just, clubs that can actually go on and represent. And yeah, it's all a bit bizarre. And yeah, I would agree totally that it's now becoming more obvious, I think, as time goes on, that it's become clinically unfair on the other counties. I think Matt would probably correct me on this one, but I think it's something like 13 or 14 of the 18 intermediate titles have been won by Kerry teams. And I think the last one to win outside of Kerry was, he'll tell me, he'll text me and correct me on this, we've listened, but Clyde Rovers or someone like that, like 10 years ago, were the last team to win it outside of Kerry.
That says it all, doesn't it? Like,
yeah.
that says it all. Like,
it
coming
doesn't make good reason
into
for
it.
anyone else, put it that way.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty much impossible to beat them. Like, I mean, they're coming from a way higher position. It would have to be a turn up for the Bucks for them to win it. Yeah, so like I think that does need to be looked at going forward if they keep dominating these games. Because make no mistake, Rathmore dominated this game. They won by 10 points. Fossa dominated as well. They won by 11 points. Like these aren't close games. And they've had a stranglehold over the intermediate championship now for years, as you've just said. So I do think, look, it's a debate for another day. I think it's something that like maybe we can look at when we're looking at the club structure. Obviously, there's been loads of work done on the GAA structure. But I think if the club championship is going to, me personally, I think if the club championship is going to become as big as it has now, where we have the split season and we have the last part of the year just completely dedicated to the club championship, I think why would we not all just have the same structure for every county? So you have your best teams in a Division 1, you have your second best teams in a Division 2 of championship, a Senior A and a Senior B championship, and an intermediate championship and everything like that.
Yep. Sense to have
the same number of teams. I think that just makes it more fair because Rathmore and the fact that like maybe the fact that Austin Stacks have been relegated, like last year, the best team in Kerry could potentially now go into that. That's the type of thing that I'm talking about here. I'm just saying maybe it should be looked at in the future, but I'm not taking away from the achievement for Rathmore and for Fossa. Rathmore did it without Paul Murphy, who I think is probably their best player. And then, of course, Fossa, I mean, the Clifford brothers, 114 for them to score is just outsane. David Clifford with 10 points, Paddy Clifford with 1-4. You have to give them the ultimate credit. So, yeah, that is the recap here on Play on GAA. Jason, thanks a million for coming on today.
Thanks a million, Seamus. Chat to you soon.
Yeah, no problem. Guys, thank you so much for giving me your time. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Get involved in the discussion in the comments below. And until the next one, guys, take care.